and you know, we just didn't know how it was actually supposed to win, and yet it did win.
And Dan got so invested in that lineup that he went on a epic tirade when Rojam unfortunately fell a little bit short.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, don't even get me started on that. I am still upset, and I will continue. I'll tell my grandchildren about that one day. The Legend of Rojam.
But there's some lineups in this tournament that can rival even Rojam's choice. Like some of the things that we were talking about King Mukla, we haven't even mentioned the Togwaggle yet. Like
Yeah.
there is a King Togwaggle in this tournament, Frodan.
Yes, and it is with the King Mukla. It's not even just
That's
like
just one deck.
It's the OTK Paladin. We have no idea what you know, they were thinking, and we don't know. We didn't even get a chance to talk to him, but you know, that's neither here nor there. We're getting ready for the first game here between Akumaker and hikage. So make sure you guys tell people that this broadcast is happening. #HCT. Let people know. Share. And a big shout out to McDonald's for sponsoring the broadcast. That's right, McDonald's Australia. Thank you for you know, being a proud partner here for the Hearthstone Championship Tour. We've made it, Sodom.
We have. We are officially in the big leagues now. Macca's, as I believe you are forced to refer to it while in Australia, has come on board.
That's great. I love the thematic decorations also of the set. We have some bread and cheese everywhere, not just here in the catch set, but you can see Akumaker. That's the real trophy. You don't actually take the plaque. You actually just take the fake bread and cheese back home.
Or, if your opponent looks at you funny, you could just pick up one of those loaves of bread, which is probably quite stale at this point, and beat them to death with it.
Yes. Yeah, it's probably true. We will have to stop them halfway through. We don't condone. I mean, at this point, we don't really want to circulate the violent video games.
It's a fair point.
Ideology.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So yeah, I guess while we have a second here, we can talk a little bit about some of the other decks that are represented here in this tournament. We kind of mentioned the OTK Paladins with the weird King Togwaggle, but I also want to focus on the fact that some people brought Quest Warrior and Jade Elemental Shaman. You know, kind of taking a leaf out of Purple's book, who was really pushing that in the West.
Yep.
With Murmuring Elemental, doing some cool combos. And that guy even has Rummaging Kobolds, so he can get Jade Claws back.
Yeah.
And summon even bigger Jades and even larger green men. What a world we live in where Jade Shaman might be the most viable Jade deck at this point.
Yeah, it is very interesting. But again, it comes back to like that control buster strategy, right? Like everyone's kind of looking for that one deck that can punish some of the greedy decks that we've seen do well in the previous two tournaments, the N'Zoth Mages and the Control Paladins that we've seen being played. And people have, you know, very different views on where to go with that while still having like a stable build when you come up into the aggro matchups, because you don't want to lose too many percentages against the floods of Murlocs or Frostbolts and Fireballs being thrown at your face. So Jade Shaman is definitely something that can do that, but one of the big problems Jade Shaman has always had is that it can't quite get there in terms of just the endless stack of Jades that really just completely punish control and give them no chance. But all those extra tools you were mentioning can really push you past that 8-8, 10-10 mark and start getting yourself up towards those like 12-12s that you're going to need to really end the game against the most resilient decks.
What's your take on Spell Hunter? We have a few of those actually. We have 3 Spell Hunters in the tournament.
Don't ask me about Barnes decks, Frodan. You'll get me in trouble. I'm close enough already.
I'll ask you in the final moments of this tournament so that we can exit out and then run to the airport. But Spell Hunter is definitely making kind of a splash here. I didn't really expect to see much of it, considering that I think people might be overrating it, given how, you know, the confirmation bias. Like, wow, I lose this deck a lot because of Barn Jasharaj versus actual data on it.
Yeah, I do agree. I'm surprised that it came back. Obviously, like, we've been on a real roller coaster with Spell Hunter. Obviously, To My Side was released, and it was met with baffling vitriol by the internet. Then suddenly day one, Spell Hunter was the best deck in the game.
Right.
To My Side was the highest win rate card in the entire game. Yeah. And then within a few days, that deck kind of completely disappeared. And you know, if people were playing Hunter, they were playing like Tundra Rhino Corridor Creeper kind of decks instead. And now we've come all the way around full cycle again, where Spell Hunter is being played yet again. But I would also predict that we'll see like the same wave, and it will vanish from the meta again fairly quickly. I don't think it's here to stay, but you know, Barnes is just that boy. Like, he just creates strategies that no other card can possibly allow to function in this game.
Yeah, I want to see the Spell Hunters make kind of a splash, because I know Firebat's been hyping it up a lot, and then his good buddy Zalay was saying that it's not very good. So I don't know who to believe. You know, both of them are very well-respected players. We'll see who ends up being right there. And then we have, I kind of mentioned before, the Quest Warrior. That one kind of took me off guard as well because that was one of the last archetypes I expected from Warrior to arrive here. You know, Quest Warrior has long been dead for a while in the metagame. What makes it come back here, you think?
I honestly, you've got me kind of stumped on that one. I'm with you. I would have predicted 0 warriors. I think if we did see a warrior, it was more likely to be a Dead Man's Hand kind of style than a Quest Warrior. But yeah, seeing the quest come out, I honestly feel like that quest strategy, the reward from that quest, is slightly underpowered, as weird as that sounds, like compared to a lot of the other things that the decks can do as a final win condition. So it surprises me to see that come out, but you know, we will just have to see how the strategy evolves.
Moments away here from the first game. Just we're getting all of our technical stuff set up, but here's the thumbs up from the admins. Looks like we're ready to go. We'll see what these guys have in store. Oh, just kidding. Final confirmations. But yeah, we'll see what these guys have in store for the first games here. You know, and I want to see if some of these other interesting cards that have made their way into the metagame can have big impact. One of them that also surprised me in the past weeks was Fungalmancer. That is in the lineup of Akumaker, and assuming he wins the series, he has to play that Murloc Paladin. And Fungalmancer was a card that's, you know, people weren't really talking about, but when Muzzy was putting in a zoo and a few other people started taking notice of it, it actually has some pretty good effect. What's your thoughts on it?
I think it appeared in 10.2 after the nerf to Bone Mare. Essentially, that opened up room in deck lists for like that one additional board leverage card. We first saw it in Zoo as kind of, you know, a buffed up Defender of Argus effect. You'll pay the 1 extra mana for just a bigger blowout turn. Now we're seeing it, like, as you said, Akumaker's Murloc Paladin is playing it. And the difference is, like, Akumaker is playing 1 Blessing of Kings and 1 Fungalmancer, I believe. So those are kind of directly competing cards. Fungalmancer is a little bit more effective in kind of aggro mirrors, in my opinion, where if you get a minion to stick, you actually, like, that additional 2/2 body can be an extra breakpoint on the board for you. Whereas if you just make, like, 1 giant 6/6 minion and your opponent has 3 minions in play, like, that 6/6 doesn't get to go face, which is where you want it to, because you have to start trading away individual minions. So I've actually messed around with Fungalmancer a lot, and it's a very, very effective card that surprised me. I will confess that I pretty much dismissed it until I saw that other players were having success with it. And it's one of those cards where you have to see the effect that it has on games. You can't just evaluate the cold hard stats of it, because it just doesnn't really seem good as a 5-mana 2/2, even with the +4/+4 coming into play. But when you see like some of the things it can do to a board state, it does start to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it reminded me of when I first saw it, of how underwhelmed I was by the oh man, I'm gonna forget. I think it's Menagerie Warden. It's the 5-mana 4/4 that gives +2 to like a dragon, a beast, and a Murloc.
Menagerie Magician?
Magician, you're right, you're right. And I first thought that card was like, wow, that's a lot of stats on 5 if you can land it on 2 minions, but it wasn't very consistent. But now, because of what's been out there in the metagame, Fungalmancer is relatively consistent. And you're absolutely right. It helps you stack and snowball the board a lot, especially if you're playing against a lot of those faster decks. It's going to ultimately lead you to a victory.
The other thing that's worth noticing about Murloc Paladin in particular is that you're curving it from Call to Arms. So your ability to actually have things stuck to the board is extremely high, especially because Call to Arms rips a Righteous Protector so often, which means even if your opponent has 2 or 3 minions in play, they're actually still often very unlikely to be able to trade through everything that you have on board, which allows that curve to come into play.
True that, true that. A couple of the tech cards that might be very interesting in the long term, we'll see, is a Dragon Slayer.
We didn't even mention that yet, you're right.
Making out an appearance here. The Zoo Warlock has Dragon Slayers, plural.
Yep, 2 of them.
And you know, I've one time ironically put in my Hunter, because I put every single tech hate card in Hunter before.
And just stitch track of them out.
Yeah, Galaka Crawler, Dragon Slayer, Stitch Tracker Tracking, Flare. Harrison Jones.
You just queued up ladder to try to ruin people's decks.
I did, and I actually had a 50% win rate.
Nice.
It was like rank 5. All right, here we go. We are finally underway with our first series here at HCT Sydney, and we're going to start things off with quite a bang. That early crit from Hikage with Prince Keleseth is going to be very nice, especially Cobalt Librarian getting that drawn. But immediately you see some of those weird cards coming to the hand. The Blaze Caller. So overall, this should be really good for Hikage because Prince Kel'Seth, of course, is still one of the highest win rate cards when played on curve in Hearthstone.
Yeah, he is going second against a Murloc curve from Akumaker, though. Akumaker doesn't have the Rock Pool Hunter, which, you know, one of the ways you can beat a Prince Kel'Seth is just having tempo before the Kel'Seth comes down and just never letting go of it. Because generally Kel'Seth decks don't really play too many board swing cards. Like back in Rogue, there was like the Vilespine Slayers and the SIs, that was it. Everything else just became like huge piles of stats after Kel'Seth hit the board. And Zoo's actually pretty similar these days. You know, gone are the days of just abusive sergeants and power overwhelmings, value trading your board. A lot of the time it's just playing stat for stat. So if Akumaker was able to just snowball a board early on, then he might have had a much higher chance. But the fact that he's going to have to contest a pretty impressive board state on turn 2. There is that Dragon Slayer coming straight off the top, ready to come down on curve on 3.
Look, if Dragon Slayer can be a 5/4 every time I play on 3, I will put it in every one of my decks.
Damn straight.
Hikage kind of evaluating the threat level of this Knife Juggler, whether or not he needs to remove it at all. And Knife Juggler is one of the more problematic cards in Murloc Paladin, particularly because of how wide they can go very fast. And if they protect it with, you know, Righteous Protected, that call to arms is going to be super threatening.
Sequencing was interesting, and that's genuinely literal definition of the word interesting, not caster interesting, meaning I think that was bad but don't want to say it.
I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you really think that's interesting, Sado? Because I know you, of all people, have definitely very levels of interest there.
Choosing to play it after the Librarian, his hand was kind of clunky. Like the 7 and the 5, the Blaze Caller and the Dreadlord were kind of discardable at that point, even though they're very powerful because they weren't strong early curves. By soul firing after he drew his card, he had the opportunity to discard his Dragon Slayer, which was his only like on-curve play at that time. And even if he'd have soul fired first and discarded one of his 1-drops, he still had the second 1-drop available to play. So I don't think that was as easy a decision as maybe it looked with Hikage just slamming it, but Akumaker on the other side has had a pretty straightforward curve here, and he's ramped up a huge amount of damage against the Kel'Seth start from Hikage.
This is going to be a little bit tough here for Akumaker if he can't really win the board convincingly, but so far so good. I mean, it's looking okay so far. If he picks up another 1-mana minion.
That's 17. That's 1 off lethal with the extra 1-mana Murloc.
I mean, then he's just on a weapon to win the game from that point on.
Yep. And like crucially, yes, he's leaving some very intimidating minions in play, but he has a huge board state just in terms of individual numbers of minions, which means it's very, very difficult for Hikage to be able to clear his board off. The one thing he has to be fearful of is that he is walking into the Dreadlord turn from Hikage. So that can immediately take care of his 4/1, 1/1, and if he were to play the Chum instead of the Inquisitor, take care of that as well. So I would expect to see Inquisitor come down here as the Murloc that will be played. But then how much he chooses to trade, I think he can just consistently set up lethal. And Akumaker seems to disagree as well. He's leaning towards the Chum.
Yeah, I guess he just wants the guaranteed buff on the Biolphin Inquisitor. Plus, he can use his mana a little bit more efficiently next turn as well.
Sure.
Love the pressure coming out here. Has to consider that Despicable Dreadlord. Does end up picking up the value trade there. Glacial Shard, one of those elementals, can be really powerful, but unfortunately not enough mana to utilize all of it. Is there any way for Hikage to survive here?
I don't see it with the available tools, so he's going to have to life tap.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Prince Kel'Seth in the opening hand with early curve and card draw, but the clunkiness of things like the elementals really showing off why Murloc Paladin can be so strong if it gets an early game board, and that, you know, you have to make sure you curve out very cleanly with Zoo to win back the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we do have to go all the way back to that Soulfire turn. You know, I spent the whole time talking about the sequencing, but there was also just, was the Soulfire necessary in the first place? Because we saw the Soulfire get used on a low value threat, and then suddenly there was a War Leader on the board that, you know, not just through attacking itself, but through buffing everything else, represented probably 12, 15 plus damage in total. That Soulfire could have taken care of it very easily.
Yeah, the Tech Caller had 9 tech by the end of the game. And Hikage quickly concedes from that position. And that's going to mean Akumaker takes a very nice Game 1 lead. Granted, Murloc Paladin is probably one of his better decks against the field, considering that he was favored in the majority of the matchups. Now we'll see whether or not he can stand the test against the rest of the decks here. I wonder how his Big Priest and his Secret Mage is going to perform.
Yeah, I mean, Big Priest is a deck that I always have question marks over the consistency of the deck. Consistency is often a question mark that gets pulled up to kind of slightly wackier decks in Hearthstone. But it's kind of a misnomer in some ways, because consistency doesn't really mean much more than how high is the win rate of a deck, and Big Priest has a pretty high win rate right now, It doesn't matter if it doesn't Barnes on 4 all the time, if you can still scrap out wins, kicking off with Shadow Essence or whatever else. So it's a very, very powerful deck, but the way it's being built these days, it's actually more of a control-busting deck than it is an anti-aggro deck. We're seeing players go down to 1 Dragonfire Potion, 1 Shadow Word Pain, 1 Shadow Word Death, whatever these options are. That's the build that Akumaker's gone with as well. So some of these more aggressive builds from Hikage might just be able to plow through if there isn't that Barnes on 4.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, 1 Psychic Scream, for example. Too.
Yep.
I mean, that's a card where I was like, dang, you really want to reduce your ability to wipe out boards like that, considering Big Priest really needs to stabilize against those threats in the mid game. But like you said, we'll see whether or not he can handle all those big pressure points that the Zoo Warlock, Secret Mage, and Dragon Combo Priest will put out. Dragon Combo Priest is a deck that's also still kind of going under the radar. When people talk about Priest, they're talking about the decks that they hate the most, like the Spiteful Summoner Priest.
Sure.
They hate the Big Priest. And when I say hate, it's just that they don't like losing to it because it's such a good deck. And people really don't talk much about just Dragon Priest at its core with an Inner Fire Divine Spirit combo, and yet a lot of players are climbing it. Orange was posting a deck list this morning about how he's getting top 5 Legend with that deck with a few other people. So why aren't people hyping up this deck more, you think?
I honestly don't know. I had similar conversations with Orange. Orange used the phrase to me that Dragon Combo Priest was his new home after the Raza nerf, because he played perhaps more Raza Priest than any other man alive, and now has switched over to that Dragon Priest. But Akumaker is going to be on the Big Priest here. Hikage is going to go with that Secret Mage, which does have a strong matchup here, because it can push through a good chunk of early damage if it gets a minion start, and then unless it's specifically Obsidian Statues that hits the board, it doesn't have to mess around with the big wall of taunts that Big Priest can put in the way late game. It can just burn straight over the top. Whereas the more minion-based decks in the late game actually have to find their ways through, the Lich King and whatever else it is.
Well, we'll see if Hikage's weird build, the Frost Node Doomsayer, comes into play. Don't imagine that it's really good against these things like the Big Priest, considering that Big Priest usually wins the battle of attrition. They just have a threat that eventually sticks, and it can even just be a 5/5 Lich King that just ends the game by itself. And not to mention that even if you are able to get the burn down, things like the Greater Healing Potion twice over here in Akumaker can really help him get over that hump of the burn damage.
Hikage here going with the Ice Block as his free secret, which I definitely agree with. When you're going first with Secret Mage, you generally want the first secret you play not to be Counterspell, so then your opponent is tempted to throw away their coin to test for that Counterspell, and then at the point where they've thrown away their coin, suddenly the value of the Counterspell that you have in hand goes through the roof. So that is probably correct sequencing from Hikage in this spot. But now he has the debate between further developing now for immediate pressure, or just trying to make that Cabal Crystal runner cheaper in the long run for a bigger swing turn. And he is going to go ahead and drop the Counterspell, pretty much in full knowledge that the coin is still in hand for Akumaker. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about having, like, all these options as the Big Priest is that you have to just be able to play with danger. You have to always be on the edge and making sure that you're okay taking that damage and accounting for all that. So I definitely like the more conservative approach from Akumaker, and that there is a lot of power in using the coin just for that extra tempo swing on the board to lock it out.
Right.
It's like one of the big things about practicing with Firebet, for example, was that Firebet is so good at understanding a big picture of when the game can just swing the opposite direction. It doesn't matter if you have 1 health or you have 30 health, as long as you're able to just swing it enough that their opponent gets locked out of the game. And that's where the coin really comes in. A lot of people don't really value it. They think, what's the fastest time I can use my coin? Like, in this case, do I coin Shadow Essence? Or perhaps do I get even greedier if I'm Akumaker and do another play? But it looks like he is going to go for a board coin. Now he picked up the the circle of healing. Because before I was looking at that coin, it's like, can he get away with using it? But in this case, it seems good.
Yeah, the coin dynamic in the early game here was super interesting, as you said. Like, the surface level exchange between Counterspell and coin is one thing, but then on that very turn where I said, like, I liked seeing the ice block come down, he could have actually still played Counterspell because it blocked a potential coin Barnes, for example. Like, that could have been his thought process. Then you saw later on, Akumaker almost certainly knew that one of those secrets in play was Counterspell, chose to throw away a Shadower Pain instead of the coin for exactly that reason you were talking about. The coin gave him so many options for coin Shadow Essence, coin Dragonfire Potion, or even just curving out with those options naturally and just coining an Obsidian statue later on if that's what it comes down to.
Ysera, not necessarily the target you're looking for there. I think Akumaker would have been really happy with almost any other option. And I'm not even sure if Ysera Awakens is a really good option too, considering that you don't want to damage yourself. This is where the Frost Nova is going to have to be used here for Hikage, just to stall and get a little bit more tempo on the board. But Akumaker first going to test the counterspell and knows that it's explosive runes now. And can heal. He has double greater healing potions, so perhaps he does feel a lot more comfortable using this Ysera Awakens.
Yeah, picking up the second greater healing is just such an insane pickup at this point because it allows him to take that 5. He knows now he can stabilize, perhaps even through Alaneth at this point with the amount of healing he has available between statues and greater healing potions. And now, crucially, because he gets to use that Ysera Awakens without too much fear, he now just has a 5/5 Ysera on the board. And now this thing's uncontested. It's actually looking like a pretty strong role for him instead of just a more defensive Taunt minion.
Right, because then it gives him a lot of those cards that he can squeeze out value. And Akumaker, even if he didn't get the second greater healing potion, has a Shadow Visions to dig deeper. And that's what makes the Big Priest pretty consistent. Although Shadow Visions is actually not as good as you'd like it to be sometimes in this deck because there are so many spells that there is a wide range of what you can hit. Very crucially, Akumaker is also building up that Spell Stone. That is the switch. You know, every slow control deck eventually has to find a way to win the game.
Yes.
Except unless you're Dead Man-Hand Warrior. And what you end up doing is eventually reviving enough minions just to end the game at this point. So if Akumaker can time it, and especially if he keeps getting cheap spells to trigger a counterspell before it, he should be in a good spot.
Now Hikage is in the very opposite. His 8-mana play got essentially neutralized for 0. He does still have the Alaneth left over. Sorry, not the Alaneth, the Atiesh left over. But Akumaker has no shortage of ways to deal with that if it does come into play. Pint-sized Potion, Shadowword Horror will take care of basically any board Atiesh can create. And Hikage just does not have the damage represented right now to plow through this health total.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to look for a lot of Atiesh value in order to win this game at this point. Hikage, like you mentioned, is going to struggle with the card draw. Fireball the face. Use the freeze for tempo. Order.
Lol. Yep. You know it. Twitch chat check right now. There is at least 25 in the chat right at this moment.
Yeah, that 25 is our rank. So.
Oh, that's fair. Sorry.
Yeah. That's really funny to me, man. I wonder if that 1 damage is going to matter at all.
I do like the decision, though, to just start going all in with the damage. He saw 1 great healing potion. He saw a Shadow Visions go digging. And then if that did not hit great healing potion number 2, then he feels like he's in decent shape to be able to push through. And then on top of that, he's creating a board state and freezing the Ysera. So he's saying, okay, if your removal at this point is another Ysera Awakens, well, you have to take 5 more damage in the process. That plays straight into my game plan. But yeah. He is going to quickly get the bad news that there is plenty of healing still available in Akumaker's toolkit.
Right. And Akumaker getting this down, this Obsidian statue down, even though a lot of people might side with the board clear, empowers his revival tools the moment he can draw it, because he still has the ability to either revive it through Spellstone or just dig through an Eternal Servitude with the Shadow Visions. So I really like that Akumaker is prioritizing board development, because I think a lot of people might overreact to a fireball to the face and minions on the board. That's a lot of damage, though. Street Trickster might be able to come out pretty clutch. Oh, Street Trickster's dead.
Cute that the runes did 7 as well. I've never actually seen that interaction. Obviously, if I'd have thought about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. The spell damage affects secret. It used to be the case when there was like a weird time where Hunter played Azure Drake and then Explosive Trap did 3 to everything.
Remember Malagos Hunter as well? You'd have your like Explosive Trap to 1,000,000.
Yeah, those are the good times. Not the best choices here from Akumaker. Has a Shadow Essence to summon another minion out here. And we're looking at Yasharaj, Ysera, Obsidian Statue, and Lich King. So it's a wide range of possibilities. It's not guaranteed. Ends up picking Pint Size number 3. So he has options to nuke anything from orbit. At this point, he could probably... what? So Pint Size is -2, right? So... he can Pint Size 8 attack minions all the way down. And then Shadow Word Horror. Just in case. But it's good because he knows that ATH value might bring up big boards, so he might need multiple forms of AoE, even though he has 3 clears right now.
Right. This time, a 7/7 does get to stick to the board, though, which is fantastic news for Hikage. That 2/2 is less fantastic news, but the ATH Phantom Freebooter synergy is going to put a smile back on his face, at least.
What is this game? So weird, and it's because Akumaker had to use his Ysera tools and give multiple Medivh value.
Check that out, by the way. 1 damage to face over killing an Ysera with the hero power. This game got very wacky very quickly, Frodo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. He could have actually used the third push. So he not only 8 attack minions, he could have gotten 11 attack minions all the way down. I was forgetting the third Pint Size effect. Wow, that's ridiculous. I mean, despite all this, though, Akumaker's still very much in control. Even though Hikage has gone wave after wave, unless he is able to summon out the Aluneth, he is going just to be sitting duck. And even then, I'm not even sure Aluneth might be enough here, because Akumaker can very soon switch the board position to reversal on Hikage and start putting pressure on.
Yeah, right now, in fact, has a very powerful Spellstone available, and Hikage's probably just missed his window at this point, because now he has to deal with Obsidian Statue, and he cannot do so, which means this thing is going to heal him back up, and there is the look on Hikage's face. That is a smile of resignation at this point. I said that you can burn out over the top sometimes with this deck, not when your opponent is at 20.
Is there any Aluneth card that can pull him out here? Or sorry, ATH card that can pull him out here.
What kind of idiot makes that mistake? Says the guy that did the same thing 30 seconds ago.
English isn't my first language.
Same.
Oh, he got the order right this time.
Nailed it. Yeah, he just has to try and prevent it from healing. Try and push through in the minimum way. Just takes care of it with the Mana Worm's going to heal for 4, but there's just no damage left at this point. There is, there's not even a Pyroblast in Hikage's deck, so he has his Firelands and I believe 1 Fireball remaining, as well as his Medivh's Valets to push damage, but he is so many cards short that, like, the 1 turn that he'd need to draw Aluneth and then play it, he will already lose the game in the meantime.
We'll see. I mean, Akumaker doesn't exactly have the victory push in even 2 or 3 turns right now. I guess he does have the Ysera Awakens for burst, so it could be the possibility. But if Hikage can pick up Aluneth here, looking for card draw, doesn't get it. Blizzard will stall. Blizzard will be cheap enough to combo with Aluneth if he wants to play on the following turn. Okay, I can still kind of see maybe a Warlord possibility, but that was the second Primordial Glyph as well. Oh boy.
Likely not going to matter in the scheme of things. Because as you said, between like Nightmare and Ysera Awakens, like Akumaker has a clean pop pretty much any time he wants it in the near future, once he's completely stabilized, and then, you know, Hikage then has to play his second ice block, freeze the board, play Aluneth, draw all of his remaining burn, all in the course of 1 turn. Like it just doesn't happen from this point, I don't think.
Akumaker has 10 cards, so he's gonna burn one, but I don't think it matters very much.
Yep, that one's not gonna be too relevant.
Least impactful burn possible. And you know, at this point, I guess Hikage looking for that final possible Hail Mary. Mage is a class that's been able to pull rabbits out of a hat through some of its random card generation, but I don't see a way out here.
Nope, I'm not seeing it either. There's just too many things that he has to do and only one turn to do it. And Alunith, as powerful as it is, it's got that one turn of setup time. Blizzard Doomsayer.
Blizzard Doomsayer.
Sick. The Awakens that's been held back by Akumaker, though, he slowed down a little bit, chose to wait and pop the block without using any of those burst tools from hand, and now he has Shadow Reaper Anduin, Ysera Awakens, like whichever option he wants to go for at this point to get the job done. Wait. Akumaker, hello?
He just looks into the corners.
Oh no! I mean, it doesn't matter.
One turn away.
He's still dead. Fuck.
Oh man, that would have been an epic punish.
Aku, slow down. Take a moment. Have a deep breath.
No. He wants this game to be over with.
No, I was saying, like,
as fast as
in the long run, let's not make any more mistakes like that. Let's just take a moment, slow down the play. He's in control of the series. He was never going to lose that game. But when you're a player as good as Aku is, like, you don't want your exposure to a huge audience like this being you making plays like that. You know, he's better than that. We all know he's better than that. He just needs to sharpen up his play just a little bit.
If anything, it's very humanizing.
That's true.
It's very
that
relatable. How many times have we been in the actual 100% guaranteed victory that we just kind of rush it? And it doesn't even matter because it's still 100% even if you misplay.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, yeah, even the best players can sometimes let their guard down, but you have to be vigilant, and you have that time, so why not just factor into all the possible decisions?
Nope, you're right.
But going into game number 3 here, now we kind of mentioned at the very beginning that Akumaker was trying to target that secret mage. He said that's my best chance to escape out of the series. And now that he's up 2-0, he's in a strong, favorable position to win the game, even if he was unfavored at the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that secret mage, we saw the exact problem that Akumaker highlighted when we were talking to him. He said, you know, I don't really like that build. I don't understand why you'd cut Arcane Intellect. And you saw straight away, like, Hikage was just out of options so quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's the nature of the deck, right? You know, you have 2 different cards that allow you to play secrets for free from your deck. So you're from your hands. You're going to burn through your hand size so quickly, and you need refill. And yeah, Aluneth is the one refill card you need if you draw it. But well, guess what? Other cycle cards help you hit that Aluneth more often as well.
It reminds me of the deck that Tither Celestial popularized back in 2014.
Yeah.
It's Leper Gnome and Pyroblast.
Yep.
With Frost Nova and Ice Block. And I don't remember if it had Doomsayer, but I think it might have.
The very first builds did have Doomsayer, and then later on they were cut out just for more straight damage as like Forgotten Torch became available, for example.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, great times. But yeah, the aggressive burn mages. That was the first version of it, and then eventually his transition to what it is now, which is certainly interesting. Now, Akumaker's going to play the mirror, and he has a Value that he plays just as a River Crocolisk. And this is a really important play just to establish the tempo on the board because the matchup is very explosive based off of how you can lock your opponent out of possibilities if you're able to play any secret with a combo, like you Kirin Tor Counterspell or you Kirin Tor Explosive Runes, and then you have no way to get the board back at that point. Look at this sequencing from Hikage, learning from Akumaker. And now that Cabal Crystal Runner is going to get shut down, which means that gives free reign for the Kirin Tor Mage.
That is true. Akumaker could go for the Glyph here instead of just like trying to drop his Cabal Crystal Runner, but it's just such a slow play that I think you just have to shut your eyes and hope.
Right.
And he does take the beating. That is a huge loss of tempo for him and one of his most powerful minions, most powerful threats that is down the drain there. But the Primordial Glyph Cabal Crystal Runner interaction is actually pretty cool because you're above 60% to like hit a secret off Glyph to then further discount the Cabal Crystal Runner in the long run as well. You're getting a discounted secret, which then discounts your minions even more. So it's something that's always worth thinking about, but you if you whiff and you end up with that turn where you just play nothing into a 4-3, it's exactly what you were talking about with the Medivh's Valet. You're just giving up so much tempo.
Speaking of which, Hikage had no real way to stack the board, but now with that Medivh's Valet, can start generating better tempo, although this is where the punish, the deck building again, comes into play here. That Frost Nova is pretty useless, and Hikage would have loved to get an opportunity to use Arcane Intellect in this position instead.
Right.
Twice over, actually. Last turn he could have played it instead of Ice Block, and this turn he could have played it. And then how much deeper you'd be in his deck setting up for lethals in 2 turns.
Very true. Hikage just double-checking every world whether he can get to lethal quicker with Frostbolt instead of Ping just because of mana allocation. It looks like he is going to go ahead and throw it out.
There is also, I guess, credibility to the idea that Akumaker could have just played a counterspell, so maybe throwing a Frost Nova into the counterspell as a possibility as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just get it out of the way. Now, of course, we kind of hype up Alaneth as one of the best legendary weapons, but in the mirror specifically, it's so bad for tempo that, yeah, you could just lose because of it. So Akumaker instead has to opt to play this Cabal Crystal Runner. But is it going to be enough here? Kage actually, if he gets one more minion, can start chaining the Frost Novas to actually generate a way to lethal. Doesn't pick it up, though. Only gets a Fireball.
Feels like Frost Nova time to me anyway, honestly. Yeah. Like, that 5/5, if you're going to deal with it, you want to deal with it with a Firelands Portal, not a Fireball. And also just playing Frost Nova here just gives you the even better opportunity to not deal with it at all and just go face for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so the Fireball and the Firelands Portal represents 11 damage, and then you can get 4 from the Medivh's Valet attacking over 2 turns with Frost Nova. You ping twice, that's an additional 2. So that's 17 damage, and that puts you 1 away from being able to pop your opponent. And if you're able to get a single minion with this Frost Nova, you can compound that damage even further.
Yep. This Alaneth play, I respect it from Akumaker. I think he understands that he is in a pretty poor... Yep, very, very ironic roll of the Firelands Portal, but he understands he's in a rotten position in the matchup, but he understands that his chance to win goes to almost 0 if he does any play there that isn't play Alaneth, as low percentage as the Alaneth play is in the first place.
Akumaker looking for Primordial Glyph to bail him out. There are a handful of life gain cards that could help him, Ice Barrier being one of the best ways.
Excuse me,
but Akumaker doesn't pick it up. Instead, picks up a cheap Arcane Missiles.
Doesn't actually allow him to do anything extra this turn unless he hits all... No, even then, if he hit every missile on a minion, he would still have to ping, meaning he still can't play the Kirin Tor Mage.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just because that's the only card that actually generated damage. He's assuming that he's going to clear the board, so Vaporize and Blizzard aren't important.
Yeah.
So he just needs ways to pressure his opponent life total, which I guess Arcane Missiles for free is better than nothing.
Yeah, I thought at first that he was going to Medivh's Valet the Harrison to guarantee that only 1 missile could hit the Harrison, then rip the missiles, but then as I was looking at that line, like that just didn't open up anything for him over the Frostbolt ping play anyway.
And I mean, you know, there is a possibility that Hikage doesn't have a lot of the burn for the 13 anyways, and he is starting to climb very far ahead in the card advantage. You know, I'm starting to think that Akumaker can still do this.
He definitely can.
Like, look what he picked up. He picked up ways to discount his hand even further.
Yep. And again, it's going to come down to just a lack of resources from Hikage. If he is to lose this game and therefore lose this series, it's going to be that lack of Arcane Intellect because, yeah, Frost Nova was okay on 1 turn in this matchup, but it would have been immediately better as Arcane Intellect in this particular game that we've been watching.
And it even has, like, Medivh at the top end as well, which is, like... Basically, it's kind of like the Ungoro Burn Mage, but just a lot faster, you know, because it has a lot of those defensive tools, but it also has a lot of those aggressive ones as well. It's very weird. Now Akumaker is pressing in, gets second Mana Worm. Hikage unable to leverage his damage. This is something to think about. He exchanged that Firelands Portal for that Frost Nova keep so that he can keep the board presence. But now, because of Alaneth and Akumaker taking that risk of investing into his card advantage as opposed to tempo, is now paying off huge dividends.
Yeah, it's something that I actually did want to talk about, but we were on a different subject at the time. When that Fire Lance hit the 5/5, I think that was in response to the Alaneth turn from Akumaker, right?
Right.
At which point, your race is to kill him before his overwhelming card advantage can get him back into the game. Hikage is still at 30, Akumaker is at 12. Subtract 5 damage from that Fire Lance portal from the 12 that he's at, he would be at 7. There is a Fireball and a Ping in hand.
Yes.
Like it seemed like a very strange decision to me. Not an interesting decision, a strange decision, Rodan, to Fire Lance portal that minion.
I like 2018 subtle. I want you to make that differentiation every time. But yeah, he would, and because it's an ice block mirror in this position as well, Akumaker and Hikage both have ice blocks. He'd be one ahead, and Akumaker uses Primordial Glyph, which he just showed you, so he didn't have the second ice block.
Right.
This could be a disaster here, and Hikage's weighing whether or not he wants to toss his Frost Nova to save himself the possibility of getting popped. There is 7, 10, 15, 17, 18 damage represented, but with a Pyroblast, that is a pop guaranteed. Oh, Akumaker has a second Primordial Glyph now coming in hand as well. That's always nice. He can guarantee a second ice block. I think that just locks Hikage out of the game.
Well, he will have fatigue to worry about at some point because the game is being stretched out by ice blocks into the Alaneth. So ice blocks do not necessarily guarantee Akumaker extra turns.
I wasn't paying attention to his deck size. That's usually around 6 cards or less. So that could be the case here for Akumaker.
What to do?
If it comes down to fatigue, there was that one turn where Akumaker ripped an Arcane Intellect when he already had Alaneth in play that might come back to bite him as well. It looked fine to me at the time, but you know, with the benefit of hindsight, it might be something to go back and look at.
So Akumaker drew another card, and I think it won't really come down to the fatigue, but he purposely didn't summon a 5-mana minion because I think of the possibility that Hikage could do something really weird, like summon, like if an Abomination came out and did damage to himself. But that was a very deliberate play from Akumaker to draw a card, get him deeper in fatigue, and then to not summon a 5-mana cost minion.
From the Fire Lance?
From the Fire Lance portal. Yeah. Very interesting to me.
Yeah, Bomb Squad. Bomb Squad, Abomination.
Bomb Squad, Abomination.
Yeah.
And
that's the secret.
Akumaker's like, oh no!
I mean, he's 1 card away from fatigue, so if this is ice block, he loses the game.
Wow.
He knows that that is just a simple ping him in the face and find out decision. No ice block, he won. If it was ice block, he would immediately have killed himself with fatigue. You saw how much it meant to him. He got over that little hiccup at the end of the last